In December 2024, the Pentagon published its annual report on Chinese military developments, and it included a striking projection. China aims to operate 9 aircraft carriers by 2035. 9. That's more carriers than every nation except the United States currently operates. It represents the most aggressive carrier construction program since World War II, when American shipyards were producing carriers at unprecedented rates to fight Japan across the Pacific. Chinese state media seized on the projection, presenting it as validation of China's rise to superpower status. 9 carriers would give China genuine blue water navy capabilities, power projection across the Pacific, and the ability to challenge American naval dominance in ways currently impossible. Military commentators describe scenarios where Chinese carrier strike groups operate far from Chinese shores, establishing presence in disputed waters, protecting Chinese interests globally, and fundamentally altering the regional balance of power. The shipbuilding capacity exists. China's shipyards are the most productive in the world, capable of constructing large, complex vessels at speeds Western yards cannot match. If any nation can physically build 9 carriers by 2035, it is China. The hulls, the flight decks, the catapult systems are all technically achievable. But there is a fundamental problem with China's carrier ambitions that no amount of shipbuilding capacity can solve. You can build carriers faster than you can build carrier expertise. Aircraft carrier operations are among the most complex endeavors in modern warfare, requiring decades of accumulated institutional knowledge, thousands of trained personnel, and continuous operational experience that cannot be rushed or shortcut. China is trying to compress what took the United States 80 years into a single decade, while building 6 more carriers simultaneously. Today, we are going to examine why China's carrier math does not work, why more ships mean the same problems spread thinner, and why the gap between building impressive hulls and operating effective carrier strike groups represents China's most fundamental naval challenge. By the end, you will understand why 9 Chinese carriers with inexperienced crews might be 9 expensive targets rather than 9 force multipliers. Let's start with what China currently has and the problems already evident, because existing challenges multiply rather than diminish as the fleet grows. China operates 3 aircraft carriers: Liaoning, Shandong, and Fujian. Liaoning is a refurbished Soviet hull originally built in the 1980s, purchased from Ukraine and completed by China. Shandong is China's first domestically built carrier, essentially an improved Liaoning with similar capabilities and design. Fujian is China's newest and most advanced carrier, featuring electromagnetic catapult systems similar to the United States Navy's Ford class. Liaoning and Shandong both use ski jump launch systems, inclined ramps at the bow that allow aircraft to gain altitude during takeoff. This design is simpler than catapult systems, but it imposes significant operational limitations. Aircraft launching from ski jumps must carry less fuel and fewer weapons than aircraft launched via catapults because the ski jump provides less launch energy. This reduces combat radius, weapons payload, and operational flexibility. In practical terms, a J-15 fighter launching from Liaoning or Shandong cannot carry the same fuel and weapons load as an FA-18 launching from a United States carrier with catapults. This means shorter range, fewer weapons, less loiter time, and reduced operational effectiveness. China built 2 carriers with this fundamental limitation before finally developing Fujian with electromagnetic catapults. Fujian was supposed to address these limitations. Electromagnetic catapults enable full-weight launches, allowing aircraft to carry maximum fuel and weapons. Fujian was commissioned in November 2025 after rushed sea trials celebrated as proof China had caught up to American carrier technology. Then reality intervened. According to reports, Fujian developed significant problems shortly after commissioning. Specifically, flight deck design flaws affected operations. Within weeks of commissioning, the carrier was returning for maintenance to address issues that should have been resolved during sea trials. This is the carrier that is supposed to lead China's transition to electromagnetic catapult operations, and it was already back in the shipyard for fixes. These design and operational problems exist with just 3 carriers. China wants to build 6 more by 2035, while the current 3 still have unresolved issues. Now let's talk about the crew and experience problem, because this is where China's carrier math becomes impossible regardless of shipbuilding capacity. Operating an aircraft carrier is not like driving a larger ship. It requires thousands of specialized personnel, pilots trained in carrier aviation, landing signal officers who guide aircraft aboard, catapult and arresting gear crews, aviation maintenance technicians, flight deck crews coordinating launches and recoveries, damage control teams, air traffic controllers, and countless other specializations that exist nowhere else in the Navy. China has been operating Liaoning since 2012, just over a decade. That is barely enough time to develop basic competence, let alone the deep institutional expertise that distinguishes professional carrier operations. Shandong entered service in 2019 and has been operational for less than 6 years. Fujian has just been commissioned and is already having problems. According to defense analysts, China has rushed carrier operations at an unsustainable pace. Shandong has conducted several times the number of sorties in recent years compared with its first 4 years of service. This is not because Chinese crews have mastered carrier operations. It is because political pressure demands visible progress, so carriers operate more frequently despite crews lacking adequate experience. Here is the fundamental problem. China has a limited pool of experienced carrier personnel. Every experienced officer, pilot, and crew member represents years of training and operational experience that cannot be replicated quickly. When China builds new carriers, it must divide this limited expertise across a growing fleet. If China builds a 4th carrier, experienced crew from Liaoning, Shandong, and Fujian must be reassigned to the new ship to provide core competence. If it builds a 5th carrier, expertise dilutes further. By the time China operates 9 carriers, whatever limited institutional knowledge exists will be spread so thin that each carrier has only a handful of truly experienced personnel surrounded by rookies learning on the job. This expertise dilution raises real operational risk. The United States has operated aircraft carriers continuously since World War II, over 80 years of accumulated institutional knowledge. The United States Navy has refined carrier operations through decades of real-world experience in multiple wars, countless exercises, and continuous operations. When a new United States carrier enters service, it is staffed by personnel from a deep pool of expertise built over generations. There are instructors who have spent entire careers specializing in carrier operations, training programs refined over decades, and institutional memory of what works and what does not. China is trying to build this expertise from scratch in 10 to 15 years, while simultaneously building 6 more carriers that will further dilute whatever expertise exists. Now, let's examine what inexperienced carrier crews actually means in operational terms, because the consequences are specific and serious. Carrier aviation is extraordinarily dangerous, even for experienced crews. Launching and recovering aircraft from a moving ship at sea involves constant risk of accidents that can kill crew members, destroy aircraft, or even damage the carrier itself. Landing on a carrier, catching an arresting wire while touching down on a moving deck in all weather is one of the most difficult tasks pilots perform. The margin for error is tiny, and mistakes are often fatal. Experienced carrier crews develop judgment through years of operations. They gain intuition about when conditions are marginal for flight, when to modify procedures based on weather or equipment status, and how to respond to unexpected emergencies. That judgment cannot be taught in classrooms or simulators. It comes from actual experience operating carriers under varying conditions, including difficult situations where crews must adapt and problem solve in real time. Inexperienced crews lack this judgment. They follow procedures correctly in routine situations, but they struggle when unexpected problems emerge. They are more likely to have accidents because they have not developed instincts for recognizing dangerous situations before they become critical. They are slower to respond to emergencies because they are still learning, not operating from accumulated experience. Reports from observers of Chinese carrier operations show accident rates and close calls that suggest crews are still learning basics. Aircraft recovery incidents, flight deck mishaps, and operational delays indicate crews have not achieved the proficiency that comes from extensive experience. This is normal for new carrier operators. The U.S. Navy experienced a similar learning process in its early years. The difference is China is trying to operate 3 carriers with limited expertise while planning 6 more, whereas the U.S. built expertise gradually over decades before expanding the fleet significantly. Now let's talk about the specific technical and operational challenges China faces with each carrier type, because the problems are cumulative rather than solved. Liaoning and Shandong, both ski jump designs, impose operational limitations that cannot be overcome through training or experience. The physics of ski jump launches means aircraft will always carry less fuel and fewer weapons than catapult launches provide. This fundamentally limits what these carriers can do operationally. They are useful for air defense and limited strike missions near the carrier, but they cannot project power at the ranges and with the weapons loads that catapult-equipped carriers enable. China essentially built 2 carriers with permanent operational handicaps before developing Fujian. These carriers will remain in service for decades, representing a significant portion of the 9-carrier fleet, but always operating under limitations that reduce their effectiveness compared to catapult-equipped carriers. Fujian, with electromagnetic catapults, was supposed to solve that problem, but Fujian introduces new challenges. Electromagnetic catapults are complex systems requiring sophisticated power management, precise control, and extensive maintenance. The USS Gerald R. Ford, America's first electromagnetic catapult carrier, experienced years of technical challenges despite the U.S. Navy's extensive carrier expertise. China is attempting the same technological leap without comparable institutional knowledge or operational experience. Flight deck design problems that sent Fujian back for maintenance shortly after commissioning suggest China rushed the carrier into service before adequately testing and validating systems. This pattern is consistent with meeting political deadlines over ensuring operational readiness. The result is the newest, most advanced carrier already having problems that should have been identified and fixed during trials. China is building more carriers like Fujian. Additional electromagnetic catapult carriers are planned to comprise the modern portion of the 9-carrier fleet. Each will face similar problems: complex technology, limited institutional expertise, pressure to commission quickly to meet political timelines, and insufficient operational experience to identify and solve problems before they become serious. Let's examine the training and development timeline because the math of building expertise is unforgiving. Training a carrier pilot takes years. First comes basic flight training, then advanced fighter training, then carrier qualification training, learning to land on a moving ship, a skill set completely different from land-based operations. Then comes operational training in the specific aircraft type the pilot will fly from carriers. Finally comes integration into the carrier air wing, learning to operate as part of a coordinated strike package. Even after completing training, new carrier pilots remain relatively inexperienced for years, gaining proficiency through accumulated flight hours and operations. Senior carrier pilots have thousands of flight hours, years of carrier operations, and have faced many challenging situations that build the judgment and instinct that separate veterans from rookies. China needs to develop not just pilots but also landing signal officers, flight deck crew, maintenance technicians, damage control specialists, air traffic controllers, operations planners, and numerous other specializations. Each requires years of training and experience to achieve proficiency. China needs thousands of these specialists for 9 carriers, far more than currently exist in the People's Liberation Army Navy. That gap is a gap in experience. The training pipeline cannot scale as quickly as shipbuilding. China can build carrier hulls in 3 to 4 years. Training experienced carrier crews takes 10 to 15 years from initial recruitment through achieving senior expertise. You cannot compress this timeline significantly without sacrificing proficiency. By 2035, when China supposedly operates 9 carriers, where will all the experienced crew come from? The current pool of expertise from Liaoning, Shandong, and Fujian will be spread across 9 ships. That means each carrier would have only a fraction of the experience that today is concentrated in 3 carriers. More ships, the same limited expertise, divided even thinner. Now let us address the comparison with United States carrier operations, because understanding the benchmark reveals how far China must go. The United States operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, each capable of sustained global operations. United States carrier crews represent the accumulated expertise of more than 80 years of continuous carrier aviation, including combat operations in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and countless other operations and exercises. When a United States carrier deploys, the crew includes personnel who have spent entire careers specializing in carrier operations. Senior chiefs with more than 20 years of carrier experience, commanding officers who have worked their way up through multiple carrier tours, pilots with thousands of carrier landings, flight deck crew who have handled countless launches and recoveries in all conditions. This expertise does not exist in isolation. It is institutional knowledge passed down through generations. Younger sailors learn from experienced mentors who learned from their own mentors. The United States Navy has refined carrier operations through 8 decades of continuous iteration, learning from both successes and failures and developing best practices that are now standard procedures. China is trying to replicate this in 10 to 15 years while building 6 additional carriers. Even if every Chinese carrier sailor were perfectly talented and dedicated, the institutional knowledge simply does not exist yet. You cannot shortcut experience. You cannot compress 8 decades into 1 decade without sacrificing proficiency in ways that matter operationally. So what does all this mean for China's 9-carrier ambition and the actual military capability it represents? First, building the carriers is achievable, but building the expertise to operate them effectively is not, at least not on the timeline China envisions. Shipyards can construct 9 carriers by 2035. Training programs cannot produce the thousands of experienced personnel required to operate 9 carriers proficiently. Second, adding more carriers can dilute China's carrier capability rather than multiply it. 3 carriers with concentrated expertise are more effective than 9 carriers with expertise spread thin. Each additional carrier lowers the fleet's overall experience unless training and experience accumulation can keep pace with shipbuilding. Training and experience accumulation cannot keep pace. Third, China's carrier fleet in 2035 will look impressive in photos and videos, 9 massive ships that appear formidable. But operational reality will be 9 carriers with limited proficiency, higher accident rates than professional carrier navies, reduced operational tempo because of crew limitations, and vulnerability to adversaries with superior carrier expertise. Fourth, China continues prioritizing appearance over capability, building hardware to meet political goals without ensuring the institutional expertise to employ that hardware effectively. The 9 carriers serve propaganda purposes well, demonstrating China's shipbuilding capacity and ambition. But they do not necessarily translate into 9 effective carrier strike groups capable of challenging U.S. carrier operations. The Pentagon understands this. When assessing that China aims for 9 carriers by 2035, American analysts are not assuming 9 proficiently operated carriers. They are assessing 9 carriers with varying capability levels, significant experience gaps, and operational limitations that reduce their effectiveness below what raw hull count suggests. Let us be clear about what this does not mean, because accuracy requires nuance even in critical analysis. This does not mean Chinese carriers are useless or that China has made no progress. Operating even 3 carriers represents genuine achievement and provides valuable learning experience. China's carrier program is impressive by historical standards, developing capability from nothing in remarkably short time. This does not mean China will not eventually develop genuine carrier expertise. Given enough time and experience, China could build the institutional knowledge necessary for professional carrier operations. The question is the timeline and whether China can do this while also rapidly expanding the fleet. And this does not mean the United States should dismiss Chinese carrier capabilities or become complacent. Even inexperienced carrier forces represent significant capability in certain scenarios, particularly operations near Chinese shores where land-based support supplements carrier operations. But it does mean China's carrier math does not work, as impressive as 9 carriers sounds. More ships means the same limited expertise spread thinner. You can build carriers faster than you can build carrier expertise. And 9 carriers with rookie crews might be 9 expensive targets rather than 9 effective strike groups. So what is the bottom line on China's carrier ambitions? China wants 9 aircraft carriers by 2035. The shipyards can build them. The money exists. The political will is there. 9 carriers would look impressive in propaganda, demonstrate China's industrial capacity, and symbolize China's great power status. But carriers are not just hulls. They are complex operational systems requiring thousands of trained personnel with years of experience. China operates 3 carriers with limited expertise accumulated over just 10 to 15 years. The current 3 carriers have design limitations and operational problems. Crews are inexperienced by professional standards. Fujian, the newest and most advanced, already returned for maintenance shortly after commissioning. Building 6 more carriers by 2035 means dividing limited expertise across 9 ships. It means every carrier has fewer experienced personnel. It means higher accident rates, reduced operational tempo, and the vulnerability that comes from inexperienced crews operating complex, dangerous equipment. The United States spent 80 years building carrier expertise through continuous operations, multiple wars, and institutional learning. China thinks it can replicate this in 1 decade while simultaneously expanding from 3 to 9 carriers. The math does not work. The timeline is impossible. The expertise cannot be manufactured as quickly as the hulls. China will probably build 9 carriers by 2035. They will look impressive in photos. State media will celebrate them as proof of China's rise. But they will be 9 carriers operated by crews who do not know what they do not know about carrier operations, lacking the institutional expertise that distinguishes impressive-looking hardware from genuinely effective capability. More ships, same problems, spread thinner. That is China's carrier math. Don't forget to subscribe for more analysis on the difference between impressive hardware and actual operational capability. Thanks for watching.